Now let's check this one out. This is another one. He goes off on white privilege. Then the I think Souza shuts him down. You know what I'm saying? So let's see what's going on here in this one because we need to definitely listen to a lot of things today that should be explained and should have been explained in more ways and debated on and have a dialogue on these matters. So without further ado, let's check it out.
Are, are you willing to give up your illicit seat that you don't deserve here at Amherst to make room for a disadvantaged minority? Yes or no?
After World War II, the white middle class soared to prosperity as a result of bills like the GI Bill. And African Americans who were coming home from war didn't get those benefits simply because they were African American. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs denied African Americans access to those benefits simply because of their race. And you are correct in saying that no one today dealt with that particular issue. With that being said, however, there was wealth amassed as a result of those programs that still exists today. And when I think of your example about an individual who works as a janitor and sees people dining in a beautiful cafe walking home from work, I want to ask you, do you think any of that indignation, given certain circumstances, might actually be justified simply because there have been systematic blocks in people's way throughout American history, not ending with slavery, not ending with the Jim Crow laws, not ending, some would say even today, we still have housing discrimination, all of which is to say, you found that during the Cold War era, there was a massive boom in the white middle class's prosperity, and you just didn't have that among African Americans, not because they weren't meritorious, but because they were discriminated against.
Are you actually saying that you believe in a rule of social justice today that says globally, let's look at this as a global rule of justice, I'm going to figure out whose ancestors did what to whom, and I'm going to return goods that were illicitly taken from the beginning to the people who had it originally? Do you believe that that's a viable way to organize our society? Do you believe, if I can ask you a direct question, that you are the beneficiary of white privilege here at Amherst?
I
yes
do,
or no?
Well, yeah, and I'll
pause.
Okay.
If you are, can I ask you a further question?
Oh, okay, yeah, but I don't just say it in a sort. I don't say it in a self-flagellating and self-aggrandizing way.
Hold on. Okay, go on.
You know I really try not to. I'm simply saying that because you asked me. Really, I view the recognition of one's privilege as an impetus to change things. So I don't just say I have white privilege. I try to help those who have not benefited from such privilege.
How? Hold on. Let's pursue this for a moment. You say, this is actually very important because there's a psychology here, right?
Well, you see, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm really not trying to attack you. I'm not trying to be provocative. I just find that often, I think the essence of much of this discourse surrounds hypocrisy. And you're trying to demonstrate that I'm a hypocrite. I say I benefit from white privilege, yet I don't actually do anything. But I'm gonna backpedal and say that ultimately I think what the greatest vice is cruelty, and I'm not gonna. I don't want to be hypocritical. So to answer your question, I'll start in high school. I mean, do people want to hear this, or do we?
Educated. Let them know.
Look, let me say where I'm going with this, because I think you're.
Too bad.
All of which is to say, it's not like I picked anyone out to help based on the color of their skin, but I was a tutor for people who tended to be low income when I was in high school. I suppose that would be one direct answer to your question, because oftentimes disparate educational opportunities are grounded in disparate economic systems, or systems that produce disparate economic outcomes. So that's one way that I would combat it on an individual level.
All right. Here's what I'm getting with this, okay? One of the benefits of a good education of reading people like Nietzsche is you begin to understand how deep the human desire is for moral self-exculpation. Moral self-exculpation. Now, you say, and I didn't say this, you said this, I'm a beneficiary of illicit white privilege. Okay?
Illicit?
Isn't all white privilege illicit? Is it deserved?
Well, in this current system, there is legality.
Illicit means immoral.
Okay. Then,
Immoral white privilege.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if I were to say to you, there are surely many deserving minorities who would like to come to Amherst but have the inherited disadvantage of American history. Therefore, since you are an acknowledged beneficiary of illicit privilege, would you be willing to step aside voluntarily, putting your own moral mouth where your self-proclaimed virtue is, and give your seat, not my seat. I realize you may be super generous with other people's advantages and favor affirmative action, so other white kids who apply to Amherst are turned away to open spaces for minorities. But I'm not talking about you acting out your virtue on them. I'm talking about you acting out your virtue on you. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to give up your illicit seat that you don't deserve here at Amherst to make room for a disadvantaged minority? Yes or no?
And that was a good debate. You see? There's nothing wrong. I understand that he didn't let the white guy answer to me the questions. I agree with the people in the comments. He didn't really give the guy a chance to really fully give a good response in more ways because of the crowd and the this and the that and all of that. And he's up there, the one up there doing all the talking. But in more ways than one, I understand what the student was saying. You know what I'm saying? Because when we look at white privilege don't always go for every single white person, and we got to realize that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them get discriminated on as well, including the Irish. They were brought over to America as slaves. So, you know what I mean? We know these factors and what took place. So, but at the same time, Point Black is not here. We're here for dialogue. We're here to bring an end to a lot of the garbage that has been going on based on historical facts, economical facts, history, historical, but the same thing, history facts, you know what I'm saying, and many other facts that should have been put out on the table because of the fact of hiding a lot of things, as you're going to see, we're going to be looking at, you know what I'm saying, in more ways than one, you know what I'm saying, but here's another one that I think that, it's completely crazy, you know what I'm saying? When we look at the situation, even here, you know what I'm saying? Witness attack, on this case and so on and so on. Donald Trump shut him up, you know what I'm saying? On this one right here, you know what I mean? Let's check out
so excited. Mommy, what did the teddy bear eat for dinner? Nothing.
To the gentleman from New York.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentleman from Texas yielding. I want to bring up that October 7th meeting real quick in just the minute we have. You're familiar with an October 6th Washington Post story entitled Federal Agency Chargeable Tax Gun Purchase Case Against Hunter Biden. Is that right? Mr.
Yes, I'm
Shepley?
familiar,
Yeah.
yes.
And then this meeting occurred October 7th, the day after this, right?
That's correct.
Was this article discussed at that meeting?
It was.
And what was the nature of the discussion?
It's in that document, that email that basically says that we got to keep the sphere small, and that.
So it was pretty clear, though. You would agree it was pretty clear that this was a leak to the Washington Post by law enforcement agents, since it describes what federal agents believe, right?
So it wasn't actually clear to me that it was, because usually they'll say that it's a law enforcement source that provided it. And if you see in the bottom, it says that they corroborated independently, and they did not mention law enforcement.
And so you don't think it's a federal agent, the agents who leaked this, when the headline says federal agents see chargeable tax gun purchase case against Hunter Biden?
Gentlemen, time's expired, but feel free to answer the question.
So prior to that, if you go back to December of 2020, there was another leak to the Washington Post that we had to get Department of Justice OIG involved, TIGTA involved. So there was other leaks that happened prior to this to the Washington Post that I think are important for us to understand as well in that situation.
They had similar information as the October 6th leak.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witnesses, thank you for being here today. I want to get quite to it because we have a lot to cover. Mr. Ziegler, you are the agent that opened up this investigation. From your transcript, page 17, what it says is that you are investigating a social media company, and through the process of that investigation, you found out that Hunter Biden was paying potentially for prostitutes in a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You also say that in the beginning phases of that investigation, reviewing bank reports, that there was evidence that he was living lavishly through his corporate bank account. Is that correct? And when I say him, I mean Hunter Biden. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Question for you, and also for Mr. Shapley. Is it a clear line of potential investigation if somebody is charging up massive living expenses through a corporate account and not doing that through their own personal accounts and not accounting for that properly on their income tax returns? Is that the basis of a criminal investigation?
You know, generally speaking, that would definitely be factors that would spur a criminal investigation. Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question real quick. So there was reference to the WhatsApp text message referring to, and everybody knows it now. Hey, I'm sitting here with my dad. Tell the chairman to give me my money because we remember, and we're not going to forget because we're the Bidens and we have all these connections. Yada yada yada. We all know that text message now. Mr. Ziegler, on page 105 of your testimony, page 105, gentlemen, you state, I know we wanted to get location data because I went to the prosecutors with this and they again came back at me with, well, how do we know that? He could just be lying and claiming that dad, Joe Biden now, that dad was there and dad was not there. Were you allowed to get location data dealing with the WhatsApp text message?
So from my memory of it and from the notes that were taken, I never obtained location data regarding that message. Did
Miss Wolf, the AUSA in Delaware, did she say, oh wow, look at this text message, let's figure out the location data and see where Hunter Biden was when he sent said message? Was she like excited about this as a prosecutor?
So, I mean, when I asked her about the location data, in her response right here, it was her responding with, well, how do we know that? It wasn't yeah, let's try and figure that out. It was like, well, how do we know that?
Well, did she read the text message? Because if I read that text message as a prosecutor, I'm saying, wait a minute, dad is sitting next to him and dad happens to be the now president, then vice president of the United States. Shouldn't we find out where Hunter was when he sent said text message? I mean, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm a finance guy, but that just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, and I think with the previous email that was referenced, 10 held by H for the big guy, now that you have those two things kind of correlating with each other, as a normal process or procedure that we would go through, you would want to figure out, is that information truthful in that WhatsApp message? I
totally agree with you, Mr. Ziegler, which is why I think it is the view of members on this committee, and frankly a lot of Americans at this point, that there are elements at the Department of Justice who did not want this information out, who did not want to go down the line of process of actually going through the evidence gathering process to see the depths to which this international pay-for-play scheme that was actually happening around Joe Biden, going through Hunter Biden, and all the money that the Biden family was occurring. That's not a question for you. That's just a statement from me. Last question. Through your investigation, how much money did you uncover was coming from Ukraine, Romania, and China?
If you hold on 1 second, let me reference the 17.3 million approximately.
Okay, so 17.3 million through your investigation, and you and Mr. Shapley, you are the guys that investigate criminal tax evasion on an international scale. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, question for the chairman. Mr. Chairman, through the investigation of the Oversight Committee, about how much money have we seen come from Ukraine, Romania, and China?
Oh, over 10 million.
Okay, so we have two separate investigations. One done by the investigative branch of the IRS that is charged with doing these types of investigations. These are the people you want doing them, and an independent investigation by the Oversight Committee. And we're coming up with the same amount of money, give or take a couple million, going through the same person in Hunter Biden. And his investigation is slow walked. And we're supposed to sit here and think that Joe Biden knows nothing? I think, for the record, Mr. Chairman, that the relevant committee needs to have questions for Leslie Wolf, the AUSA of Delaware, for David Weiss, the Attorney General of Delaware, for Lisa Monaco, who is the Deputy Attorney General, and for Merrick Garland himself, the Attorney General of the United States. Because if this action is allowed to occur, and investigations are slow walk with this level of detail, this ain't Donald Trump, y'all. These are facts. I yield back.
Thank you. Great job.